Hello, you lovely misfits. So, I really enjoyed, Tim, your last video about attaining happiness and what that might look like, and whether that should be our goal in life. So, yeah, what is it we're striving for? So, through the media and through social media and media generally, it is as though we need to strive to be something more than what we are, perhaps, through self-development or changing ourselves mentally. But there's also this idea that if we attain something, an object, a yacht, a better, faster car, a camper van, a bigger house, that somehow our status will go up in society, and then perhaps from that we will attain happiness. So what I want to talk about a little bit is the idea that perhaps we need to let go of all of that. And you touched upon meditation. And I think through meditation, we can kind of let go of a lot of things and just truly observe ourselves. Even meditation has been commercialized, hasn't it? And spirituality. I live in Glastonbury, a hotbed of spirituality, and I do see a lot of stuff that drives me crazy. But I think the answer is non-judgment, not judging others, but perhaps to look within and find that peace within. And there's no same route for everybody, is there? There's not the same route to attaining this contentment, this inner peace. And I would argue that contentment is probably more attainable than happiness as such. So I was kind of thinking about the whole thing of happiness because I work in retail. I work in a clothes shop on the high street here. And in that clothes shop, you can see a lot of how people relate to themselves, their identity, how they express themselves through clothes. And also through a financial abundance or lack of it. It's really interesting. You see a whole array of different people and you have incredible conversations with them. Some people you really relate to. I met a lovely lady this last week who, she was a raver. She raved in London. She was in her early 50s and she was just like intoxicated on life. And it was actually very contagious, that happiness, I would say she was effervescent. She was literally like fizzing with happiness. And I've got to say, it kind of rubbed off on me. And I remember back in the day, I used to be a lot more on a level of kind of cheerfulness. People used to say, oh, you're just too cheerful. But however, by being that way, you're passing that on. You talked a little bit about mirroring, Clara, or Susie. I'm not quite sure which name. I was calling you Clara, so I'll stick with that. But you were talking about mirroring and how we get mirrored through our childhoods and how that has an impact on us. But I would also argue that what's happening in our minds, what's going on neurologically in our brains, is having an impact on others all the time. So if we're sad and they're an empathic person, they will also feel that. There might be an underlying depression and others will feel that. But then we're going into the realm of empathy as well. But I would argue that by making other people's happy, our serotonin goes up, our oxytocin, if we love, if we give. So some people would argue that happiness is giving, not taking or receiving. But also I do think that there is sometimes a problem with women, particularly in terms of receiving nourishment, receiving gifts, receiving something lovely from a friend. So I'm going to just quote some Lao Tzu because I think that, there's a great knowledge out there to these things, to how we can attain. So when I let go of what I am, I become what I might be, Lao Tzu. So it's almost like if we let go of who we want to be, then we can actually step into who we truly are or who we are becoming, because we're not fixed entities. We're constantly changing, aren't we? We're not just one thing. We may be seen as one thing by one person, but aren't we in constant transformation? Isn't one moment transforming into the next? And another one by Lao-Tzu: when you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. So isn't it those people who are truly themselves who in the end gain respect? And it may not be always, but we live in such a competitive world. We live in a world where people are competing for money, for fame, for recognition. And perhaps if we can just step back from that precipice, step back from needing to be seen, wanting to be seen. I know, Mark, that you're not so wanting to put yourself in the forefront, and I respect that, and I respect anybody who's been at the forefront of campaigns. I respect them pulling back as well, because perhaps the answer is to go within. And I was reading some stuff about Jeshua or Jesus recently, and basically his teachings were about finding the kingdom within. He didn't talk about churches or looking outside of ourselves for spirituality. So those people who are wandering down Glastonbury High Street and getting the biggest crystals or whatever, going to the latest workshop or the latest retreat that may cost £888 for 3 days. This is what a lot of it is going on in Glastonbury. But perhaps the true answers are just within, going within, doing less, or being much more discerning about where we go, who we spend our time with. Perhaps our energies can become very scattered if we're out there trying to keep up with the Joneses, do everything. So, yeah, my ADHD brain is sometimes sort of going off at firing at different tangents. But yeah, I guess the answer is inner peace. I guess the answer is contentment. What brings you inner peace? What brings you contentment? It could be completely different to the next person. And I find it really sad. I actually watched a short this morning about a little boy who the parents have sort of turned him into an influencer, but they themselves are almost abusing the boy. And it's so sad to see that happening in real time, for the sake of being monetized or recognition. Often others are abused as well. So how can we kind of like navigate this minefield of life and find a sort of happiness? Well, I feel happy when I know there's others feeling the same way as me. When you guys, you're looking at Lucy Letby, you feel empathy for her. I was involved with the Julian Assange campaign as well, and I sent him letters and things, and I was so elated when he was released, because this isn't just about Lucy Letby, it's about fairness, it's about justice, it's about humanity and empathy, isn't it? So I would say that happiness comes from many different sources. And maybe some of you could also share your perception of what happiness is. I'm really happy when I'm doodling, creating art or writing. That's me. Lots of love. Have a great day.